Chapter 1. You are listening at FameTV.info. Translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation. No, if this continues, my body will collapse. Yi Chen's eyes were red, and his forehead and face were covered with veins that he quickly cut off the power supply of the nutrition cabin. He did not have time to wait for the cabin door to open, so he quickly crawled out of the cabin. The cells in his body, which were so noisy that they looked like they were going to break at any moment, finally calmed down. Yi Chen panted heavily as he sat down in front of the experiment table. After resting for a while, he finally opened his mouth to record on the recording device. The 13th experiment failed, and the cells still did not evolve. Instead, they collapsed even more violently. The cancer cells in my body have spread to my kidneys because of this experiment. I wonder how long I can last. Halfway through the recording, Yi Chen could no longer continue because of the pain in his body. He could only try his best to curl up his body and try to resist the pain from cancer in his body. After an unknown amount of time, the pain gradually weakened until it returned to normal. Yi Chen forced himself to focus again. He cleaned up the lab and returned to his house with a calm expression that he would not give up his self-redemption just because of this failure. He was even more unwilling to die from cancer, even if the hospital had already given him critical notice. Yi Chen in his early 20s, he had already become a top expert in the field of biological evolution. It was not just the countless well-known labs at home and abroad that had been trying to invite him. Even the top 3 world-class pharmaceutical factories had given him an irresistible amount of money. However, he was in high spirits at the time and determined to change the domestic environment for biological research. Therefore, he resolutely rejected all invitations and returned to the country to become a special expert of the National Institute of Biological Research and enjoy the state welfare allowance. However, just as he led his research team to overcome one difficult obstacle after another in biological evolution, and attracted praise and admiration at home and abroad, because of his irregular life all year round, as well as his spirit of research, he had forgotten to eat and sleep. Finally, when he won the Nobel Prize in Biochemistry, he also received critical notice from the hospital: terminal stage lung cancer. Moreover, it had already started to spread to other internal organs. With the current scientific methods, there was no way to cure it. Estimated remaining lifespan, 2 months. This time, Yi Chen's world suddenly collapsed. What young and famous, what biological genius, what Nobel Prize, all of this, if there was no life, what use would it be? Therefore, he quit all his jobs and honorary titles, even his own Nobel Prize ceremony. He did not attend. He just locked himself in the laboratory in order to prolong his life. He made a final effort. Today's experiment was his sudden inspiration. Yi Chen remembered that any living creature would evolve due to the changes in the external environment. It had been the same for billions of years. Therefore, he simply treated the cancer cells in his body as the external environment, and treated other healthy cells as living creatures. Using his own body as experimental material, he thought of all kinds of methods to crazily guide the healthy cells in his body to evolve. He tried to make them adapt to the cancer cells in order to extend his life. However, today's 13th experiment ended in failure once again. Lying on the sofa, Yi Chen's mind spun rapidly, creating new ways to save himself one after another. Then, he rejected them one after another. He could only force himself to keep thinking like this, otherwise, as long as he stopped for even a second, he might fall into despair. Just as Yi Chen's thoughts were running wild, just as he entered the room and turned on the TV, a peaceful voice suddenly came out. Originally, the TV was only turned on so that he would not be so lonely. Yi Chen had never cared about what was going on inside. However, this calm voice had mentioned a creature again and again, which had attracted Yi Chen's attention. Although water bears are small creatures, their vitality is extremely tenacious. They can tolerate almost any kind of bad environment. During a drought, they can even increase the water content in their bodies from 85% to 3% to resist the drought. Other conditions such as extreme temperature, ionizing radiation, lack of oxygen, and so on, creatures like water bears all have their own ways to resist. Yi Chen focused on the science show on the TV. His eyes, which were originally cloudy and dejected, became brighter and brighter until the end of the show. Yi Chen stood up with a swoosh. Without even taking his clothes, He ran towards the laboratory. Since the cells in my body can't evolve, then I will fuse the cells of other creatures into my body. With this horrifying thought in mind, Yi Chen once again entered the lab with his whole body and mind. In the next week, he tried countless methods. The water bear gene, which was extremely adaptable. The shark gene, which could heal faster and freeze blood faster. There are all sorts of genes that are either highly resilient or otherwise highly capable of insects, animals, and plants. They were extracted by Yi Chen and tried to fuse with the cells in his body, but the more he tried, the more desperate Yi Chen became. The fusion of the genes did not only fail to increase his vitality, it even triggered the cancer cells. Multiply the speed of its spread. Yi Chen knew that in a few days, he would die completely. At this time, he was half alive and half dead. Even when you go out to buy food, you have to cover yourself up, otherwise, he might scare people to death with his appearance. Once again, after enduring the excruciating pain, Yi Chen was completely in despair. In the end, he simply bought all the strong white wine in the supermarket, loaded it into the car, and returned to the lab. He had never drunk before, even a drop of wine. He would not touch it, because he thought that alcohol would destroy his brain cells. But now, everything did not matter. He only wanted to experience what it was like to be drunk before he died. One bottle after another of white wine was poured into his mouth, before he was completely intoxicated. He even felt that it would be a good choice if he drank himself to death soon. Yi Chen was completely drunk and sprawled on the experiment table. The experiment equipment, which was normally as precious as life, was now tossed aside like trash. As the bottles on the table fell, the high concentration of alcohol spread out. No one knew which chemical creature had reacted with the lab. The burning fire, along with the cracking sound of the bottles, gradually spread out in every corner of the lab. Then, a loud boom followed by a slight earthquake. The whole lab completely exploded, turning into ashes. All of Yi Chen's research over the past few days had also been devoured by this fire. After an unknown amount of time, Yi Chen opened his eyes with a slight headache. I didn't die. It seems like the heavens don't want me to drink to my heart's content. Originally, Yi Chen had thought that he would have to endure another intense pain until he died of pain. Suddenly, he realized that something was not right. His hand had turned into a sharp claw covered with wrinkled skin. Or rather, his whole body was covered with a layer of light green tough skin. He subconsciously looked at the clear river beside him. He saw a green lizard crawling on the smooth rocks by the river, staring at the water. Listen to the full novel at FameTV.info, direct link in the description.